Today we're going to look at a cool little paper tape reader, the OP-80 from Oliver Engineering, and see how it might have been integrated into Altair hardware and Altair software and used in the day. As you can see, it's a very small unit, but what's most impressive about it was how much it cost. It was only $75 as a kit, just dramatically less than any other paper tape reader you could buy. Even so, it was a very fast and reliable optical paper tape reader. You could load 4K Basic, for example, in about 15 or 20 seconds instead of the 6.5 minutes it took with a teletype. Glancing at the thing, you can see what the cost-saving mechanism was. There is no transport mechanism for this. Instead, it's up to you to manually pull the paper tape through this guide. This right here is the sensor. But it was still very reliable even though you pulled it through manually. It didn't matter whether you were steady or fast or slow. For the most part, it read without error as long as you didn't end up accidentally reversing the tape in the middle. The only other cost savings that's a bit inconvenient is the fact that there is no light source for the sensor. It's up to you to provide your own light source. There was typically a desk lamp, and it was rather critical how far the desk lamp was away from the sensor based on the intensity of the lamp. But once you had done a few experiments and figured it out, if you just set it up the same way every time you used it, this was a very reliable, inexpensive system. Even if you had a teletype, you might want to use one of these because you could load programs in BASIC so much quicker than you could with the reader in the teletype. So what we'd like to do today is try to figure out how to make this thing work in an Altair with Altair software. Specifically, let's make a low-end system that we can load 4K BASIC in and then use the reader to also load programs that we run under 4K BASIC. So along the lines of using this non-standard or non-Altair reader, we're going to also use some non-Altair boards in the computer this time, which would be pretty common for a hobbyist to do. Back in the day, there was a lot of choices. A lot of them were more bang for the buck than an Altair board, or it might have been something you picked up in a swap meet and that's what you had to make work. So that's what we're going to do with this. So I'm going to take a short video cut and we're going to come back after I have this set up ready to run and take a look at what we got inside. All right, here's the system that we're going to be running today. You can ignore the disk drive cabinet you see there on the left, and you'll see one later on the right. Those aren't part of this system for today. The terminal you see is our console. That's hooked to a serial port inside the computer. You can see the paper tape reader there under our lamp, propped at the right height for good operation. It's already got the paper tape loaded in it. It's 4K BASIC. You can see it's in the leader pattern there. This interfaces through a parallel port to the Altair. In the Altair computer itself, this is an 8800B computer. We have two MITS boards, Altair boards, the CPU board and the front panel interface that came with the 8800B. This is a 16K RAM board from a company called DRC or Dallas Research. Next to that is a PROM board. This PROM board is made by Krememco. It uses the new, at that time, 2708 1K PROMs instead of the 256 byte PROMs that were in the Altair PROM board at the time. And it also allows us to program that PROM, which you'll see in just a second is important for us. The reason we have the PROM board in here is because to boot BASIC, we plan on using Altair's multi-boot loader PROM. That's the PROM that allows you to boot pretty much any paper tape or cassette that Altair made through pretty much any of their serial boards, parallel boards, or the cassette reader without having to enter a bootstrap loader on the front panel. But we're going to have to modify it just a hair to make it work, and we'll see about that in a second. For console I/O and for parallel I/O to the tape reader, it's really dark there. Let's see if I can make it brighter. It won't brighten up much. Is a board made by Solid State Music called the IO4. This has two serial ports on it and a parallel port. The serial ports are very configurable. We can make them look like pretty much any status register that our software expects. So for example, we can strap it to make it look like a 2SIO board, or we can strap it to make it look like the original 88SIO board. In this particular case, we've got it strapped to look like the original SIO board, single serial port at address 0. So we'll tell the BASIC that, hey, this is your console, and the standard multi-boot loader switch settings will make that work as expected. The second thing on here is this also has a parallel port, which again, with the flexibility of this board, can be strapped to look a lot like the PIO board, the 88 PIO sold by Altair. The multi-boot loader includes an option to boot from the PIO board. So by changing this board to look like that, that will work as well. Almost. The one problem we have is that this board has inverted logic on the data available signal. So in other words, the data available goes to 0 when data is ready instead of going to 1 like the PIO. So we are going to have to patch the multi-bootloader PROM to handle that one difference. That's one reason why this PROM board that we have in here is handy, because it allows us to program PROMs as well. So I'll actually be able to program the patch using the board that's part of the system. Alright, well that's it for a look at the hardware. I'm going to put this camera back on a tripod and then we'll get around to booting BASIC. Alright, we're going to go ahead and boot 4K BASIC now using this. First I will set the addresses on the front panel to the address of the multi-bootloader. That's FE00 in hex. Examine that. So that is the start address of the multi-bootloader. Left 4 switches tell BASIC what kind of serial port is used for the console. A code of 2 tells BASIC to look for the original 88 SIO board, which again is how we have our solid-state music IO4 board strapped. Over here in the right 4, it tells the bootstrap loader what type of device is going to be used to load. Now we want that to be our OP-80 paper tape reader coming through the parallel port on this board. A code of 7 is how I patched that multi-bootloader PROM to know that it's going to read the PIO style board with the inverted data bit. So at this point we are ready to run, and if I hit run here, the multi-bootloader will be ready to load from our OP-80 paper tape reader. Alright, so now let me get a view over here of the paper tape reader. Alright, and all we have to do is pull this through and we'll get BASIC loaded. Alright, that's it. If we take a look over here on the, got to avoid the paper tape on the floor, sorry. You should be able to see our memory size prompt. Hit return. Terminal width, sign, we'll say yes. Oh, capitals. Alright, and we got our 13,000 bytes free. And BASIC is up and running. Alright, so now we have a new problem though. I want to load a program. How would you load a program from Papertape into BASIC? The problem is that 4K BASIC had no option for loading or saving programs through any device whatsoever. It worked if you had a teletype as the console and loaded from Papertape, because when you read Papertape on the teletype, it's coming in through the console port. BASIC can't tell that you're not just typing it in. So reality, when you loaded a program in 4K BASIC, it was being typed in by the teletype. Well, the OP-80 is coming through a totally different port than the console port, so that trick won't work. Plus, BASIC can't handle as fast as we might generate data with that OP-80 if we did figure out some way to route it through the console. So that's not really an option. So what I did, as a fun little project, I wrote a 4K BASIC loader and saver that is now stored in that same PROM that you saw on our byte saver PROM card that's in the system. All we have to do is stop the machine and run from the address that the PROM is located. I put it at FC100, and if there's nothing in memory, it loads a program. If there is a program in memory, then it saves the program. So I have to clean up the mess of paper tape on the floor from loading BASIC so that I don't step on it. But we'll come back in just a second and I'll show you how we're going to load programs using a little ROM loader for 4K BASIC. Alright, so I've got the paper tape for the basic game of craps loaded on the reader, and we have nothing in memory for BASIC. So if there's nothing there, then when we run our load save PROM, what it'll automatically do is load what comes in off the paper tape. Alright, so there's the craps program. So to do this, we have the PROM. We're going to stop the machine, examine the address FC00. That's the start of our load save PROM. And then all I have to do is hit run. And again, since there's no program in memory, it's going to automatically do a load. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And we just start pulling it through. Alright, take a look over here at the terminal. So you have an extra OK, that's when it just finished. And now when you do a list, you see we have craps in there. Very fast way to run a program. How much do you want to bet? $100. So I lost. So very fast way to load a program compared to coming in through the teletype. And it's also a very good way to save a program. But obviously with the OP-80 we can't write to it. But frankly I guess you could write to your to a teletype or other punch, or have a friend at your college or university punch tapes for you. That would be the one downside. Let's go ahead and load one more other program real quick. We're going to have to clear memory so that it's empty. If I can type. There we go. Alright, so it's empty. Let's see if I can do this while we're watching. These tapes are back here on a paper towel holder. Feed it through. Alright, that looks pretty good. Alright, so on the computer, all we have to do is hit stop and exam. The FC100 is already set, and hit run, and then pull the tape through. Now this is a longer program. This is Lunar Lander. This is about 4K. And again, on a teletype, this would take 6.5 minutes or so to load. You can see how quick that procedure is. Look here at the terminal. We got our next OK. And there's Lunar Lander. If I could type, this would be a lot easier. All right. But anyway, I don't know what I did. I just broke something. So anyway, there's a hobbyist way of taking a machine of the day and adapting it to be something that is more useful for him based on the hardware he was able to get. And this cute little paper tape reader is actually a real time saver when it comes to loading programs and making BASIC a little bit more efficient back in the day when paper tape was the slow reality.